everyone, welcome. This is 2024 Year of Reflection and Renewal. I'm Ayo Makinde, and with me is...
Ini John McQuack. Good evening.
Well, it's been quite a year, right? 364 days out of 366. Barely
almost over.
Barely 48 hours before the year is over. It's a good time to take stock, isn't it?
Yes, it is a very good time to take stock indeed. Ayo, it's a time to celebrate the gains of the year, but also look at the errors and those things that perhaps we shouldn't have done as a nation, as a country, as individuals, and take some steps just before the year comes to an end. Therefore,
Channels Television is taking this journey with you, right, to try to reflect on some of the issues, through this series, which begins today and ends on the last day of this year. So again, I say you're welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Ini John McQuack. And what better place to start but the most important thing, Ayo,
one of the
in life
today.
Yes, unfortunately.
Especially during this season.
Exactly. It's food. Well, the food stampede in Ibadan, your state, the one in Anambra State, Abuja, these reveal the severity of hunger captured in the food inflation, which today stands at 39.93% as of November. Mind you, somewhere in the middle of the year, it had hit 40. Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization has said that about 31.8 million Nigerians are at risk of acute food insecurity. Also, the United Nations World Food Programme sees 31.1 million Nigerians facing high levels of acute food scarcity, and that happened between June and August. Nigeria, unfortunately, stands at 110th position, measuring 127 countries. That's according to the Global Hunger Index, with a score of 28.8. The flood this year, that did not help matters at all. It affected 1.3 million hectares of land, and 558,000 of cropland was affected.
So if people are asking why is food so costly, why are food prices so high, I think this should give us some pointers as to why.
Exactly.
But then that's not to say that government has been unconcerned.
All through the year.
Yeah, I mean, government has come up with all kinds of interventions to deal with the challenge of food availability or a lack of it. I mean, look at the suspension of duties, tariffs and taxes on selected crops like maize, investments like 50 billion naira to cultivate 150,000 hectares of rice and maize and 100,000 hectares of wheat and cassava. How about the inauguration of Presidential Food System Coordinating Unit? The value-added tax as VAT exemption on some essentials just to lower food prices. The various programs like the Nigerian Agricultural Growth Scheme, donation of 20 trucks of rice to various states. So one cannot say that government has been abstinent.
Yeah, I guess the question, Nayo, would be how effective, did we... I still have the picture of the trucks of rice heading into the states from the National Reserve, but where did it get to? I mean, the reality check is that we're still in the festive season.
Yeah.
For instance, the tax exemption is supposed to end by the end of this month or early next month.
What happens afterwards?
How much? No, apart from that, how much impact? How much do you buy a bag of rice now? How much can you associate to the benefits of those sacrifices and programs that the government announced?
Well, as you said, those are the questions to ask. Those are the issues we'll be raising when we return from this. So just stay tuned and watch on. We'll be right back.
One of the key highlights of Nigeria's agriculture sector in 2024 is its significant contribution to the country's gross domestic product. The first quarter of the year recorded a growth of 0.18%, a recovery from the minus 0.9% growth in the same period of 2023. The National Bureau of Statistics reported that by the end of the third quarter, the sector had grown by 1.14%, contributing 28.65% to overall GDP in real terms, with crop production leading the way at 26.51% growth. The farming season in 2024 was a mix of highs and lows for farmers. While many reported bumper harvest, others were affected by dry spells in parts of Adamawa, Taraba, Plateau, Gombe, Borno, Ekiti, and southern states.
According to the forecast of the NIMET, which we usually use it as a guide, but we don't 100% believe in it, that is what caused some of the challenges we had, because at the initial stage they said the rain will start earlier and we have a breakup. Such breakup discourage most farmers and destroy most crops.
The sector continues to face challenges, including climate change, insecurity, inadequate infrastructure issues, and financing. By September 10, 2024, the Food and Agriculture Organization reported that 1.3 million hectares of land had been submerged, including 558,000 hectares of cropland. To support farmers during the year, in July, the federal government launched the distribution of 60 trucks of fertilizers to each state to boost production. The 2024 budget allocated over 360 billion naira to the agricultural sector. Additionally, the federal government secured a $600 million loan to support agricultural sector growth. The year also reveals that Nigeria faces mounting challenges in food security. 31.7 million people facing high levels of food insecurity amid soaring rates of malnutrition. This is according to the World Bank's Food Security Update report released in September 2024. The report also revealed a 28% increase in the number of people facing high levels of acute food shortages driven by factors such as intensified conflicts and climate-related shocks like drought and food inflation. The report further noted that domestic food price inflation remains among the highest globally, with food prices increasing by 37.5% year-on-year as of August 2024. In response, the government launched several initiatives to address the food crisis, including the distribution of rice palliatives to states in July. In September, the government commenced the sales of 30,000 metric tons of milled rice at a flat rate of 40,000 naira per 50 kg bag.
As part of the strategy of the ministry to tackle the food price inflation, our pledge and promise to Nigerians is that we will ramp up production back to back, which means as the rainy season is finishing, we are moving into the dry season and we are preparing.
In the year, President Bola Tinubu announced the creation of the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development, while the African Development Bank facilitated the mobilization of $2.2 billion for the second phase of the Transformative Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones Nigeria project.
The Livestock Ministry now will focus on livestock. I believe that will go a long way in making sure that we have sufficient food in the country, even start exporting. Because the livestock sector, as it is, has a lot of potentials, which is not yet tapped in this country.
The government has also introduced initiatives to support both dry and wet season farming, with a particular focus on crops such as wheat, rice, maize, and millet.
We are hoping that the smallholder farmers and small-scale producers will be incentivized by giving them good security to be able to go to their farms, by giving them access to good seeds, access to credit, access to mechanization, and then the enabling environment will be correct for people to do their utmost. And in spite...
Looking ahead to 2025, the federal government has shown financial commitments to the agriculture sector with a proposed budget of up to 800 million naira. The president has also promised to improve mechanized farming in the coming years.
I have over 2,000 tractors coming to this country for mechanized farming.
As Nigeria continues to pursue economic diversification, addressing the structural issues hindering the growth of the sector is essential, especially considering that it employs more than 36% of the country's labor force, particularly in rural areas. Hajara Halil, Channels Television.
And with that background, let's unpack, explore the key achievements, challenges, and opportunities shaping food security in the country, economic diversification, rural development. Now, this conversation is essential because agriculture remains central to our nation's growth. And if anyone is talking about diversification, agriculture definitely is it. And it is important to the well-being of millions of Nigerians. Now, to help us unpack these vital topics, we're joined by distinguished subject matter experts to help us understand the path ahead, where we're coming from and where we're going. Joining us from our Abuja studio is the President of Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, Kabir Ibrahim, and he's right there along with Mr. Godwin Atsa, who is Country Director, Sasakawa Africa Association, Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
All right. Also joining us from the virtual platform is Dr. Abdul B. Kamara, who is the Director General, Nigeria Office, Africa Development Bank Group. He is also a development economist, as well as Dr. Olufemi Ajayi Oladuni, who is Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, Agriculture and Rural Management Training Institute, Ilorin. He's a management development expert in global agriculture and rural development sector. He joins us from Ilorin. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, Thank you. Let's begin from our studio in Abuja. Now, one of the issues that a number of people have talked about quite frequently concerns the farmers. So I'll ask you, Mr. Ibrahim, to begin with. From where you are, you listened to some of the figures that my colleague here reeled out earlier, how the floods and a number of other situations informed some outcomes. And you also listened to the information we gave out about the intervention of governments to ensure that those things aren't as severe. From your experience and from information from your members, was there a balance?
Well, definitely. We took part in most of the things reeled out, both from the government and from reality, from your assessment and everybody's take on it. Of course, there are still problems. The food system is definitely impaired. There are many, many reasons why. Beginning from COVID-19, the global food system has been in trouble. Nigeria is not the only one struggling to have food sufficiency or food security. But as things go on, we are very hopeful that things will come to a very good conclusion, especially when efforts are being ramped up and we are being taken along in all the decisions that are taken. But let me clearly talk about food security now. Food security means being able to feed oneself with what one desires at the time that they desire, and that what they eat is also nutritiously balanced. So we will be talking of availability, affordability, and stability, globally, to be able to really have food security. Food must be available, it must be accessible, it must be affordable, and the supply has to be stable for us to really have food security. Now, in Nigeria, there are many, many factors debilitating against this, chief of which is insecurity and climate change. Now, all the efforts at providing mechanization, good seeds, good science and technology and all that, are also very germane to the attainment of food security. Unfortunately, there are certain things that are real to Nigeria. They are not fairy tale. Our population growth is still very high, and we must be able to really practice agriculture very well, to be able to do it round the year, not just to depend on rain-fed agriculture. We must be able to do irrigation. So we must be able to provide assistance or support for irrigation production. We must be able to also mechanize, even if it's in the short term, that we provide light mechanization principles. We must do that to be able to get to that place. Now, as time goes on, we should also have a plan to do a medium-term arrangement and then do a long term. But for now, what is required in Nigeria, because of the terrible trouble that we see, stampedes, deaths due to hunger, a lot of poverty and all that, we need to start looking at short-term measures to be able to make Nigeria food secure, or at least be able to feed a more number of people, and be sure that these numbers, 33 million people that are going to be in abject poverty or going to experience severe food insufficiency, do not happen. I mean, it doesn't happen to them because it's a very large population. In fact,
Mr. Ibrahim.
In other parlance, we are talking about 100 million people getting into that problem. We must be able to do short-term measures. These short-term measures will include, unfortunately, even more importation, and we have to do a lot more work.
All right, Mr. Ibrahim.
Insecurity.
Let me just bring in Dr. Atsa just beside you there. Dr. Atsa, you deal with a whole lot of farmers, different parts of the country, and we hear a lot of these interventions by the government. And we did hear, Mr. Ibrahim, they're talking about short-term measures and how to make it effective. What, from your point of view, is missing to make these interventions effective?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think at the moment, there are three dimensions to security that the government needs to actually take cognizance of and actually see how it tackle those. First is the national security, which is also affecting food security. We need to see how we address the issues around national security. The second dimension is the economy, which needs to also be addressed. And the third dimension is food security, which we are discussing today. Now, at the beginning of this year, the government actually set its goals and targets. One was to ensure that food is available to the citizenry. The second dimension was that the food is actually affordable. The other dimension was to ensure that the industries actually have access to raw materials coming from the agricultural sector. Now, if you look at these three areas of priorities of the government, vis-a-vis what is happening today, we can make a final conclusion on that. It is still a challenge for us, and we know the reasons. Part of the reasons are the issues around climate change, which is now real with us. we need to see how we tackle the issues around climate change. The second, which is also very important, is security. At some point, it became difficult for farmers to go to the farm, especially at the beginning of the season, around March and April. But we saw that as we came towards the end of the year, there's been a bit of stability, and the idea is that we will take advantage of the dry season and see how we grow food. Of course, the government has also been able to come up with short-term measures like those around the production of the supply of inputs to farmers. To be fair to the government, that has happened in terms of inputs like fertilizers, crop protection products. The government has done quite well in those areas. But I think on one side, insecurity seriously affected the ability of farmers to go to the farms and actually grow the crops so that Nigerians can have access to food. Secondly, is the area of climate change. We had a lot of dry spells by the time June, July, when we thought that rains would be here, rains were not there. And farmers actually planted. And in most cases, we had crop failures in most states, as has even been presented in your report. So these are the challenges that faced us this year. But then there are also good lessons for us to learn from and actually plan better for 2025.
All right, thank you so much. Let me head to Dr. Laduni. You are into the research, and we saw the government really interested in inputs this year. So we saw the seedlings being given out, fertilizer. We also talked about new species of crops. Would you say we're doing enough in that area? Are we in a safe place as a way to accelerate production?
We are not, I won't say we are not doing enough, but we can improve on it. Because presently, the quality of seeds still need to be improved upon so that farmers will not lose their investment. The research institutes are trying in the area of generating new varieties that will suit the present climate change, the drought, the flood, and all those things. But we are talking of those who produce the final seeds for farmers. They need to be more supervised, and so that they can produce high quality seeds for the farmers on their farm. Otherwise, we'll put in much and get little out of it. That is what we need to do. Apart from the research institutes, the next level who takes up the new varieties that are being developed to produce seeds for farmers, then we need to supervise them closely so that they produce the right seeds, the right quality seeds for the different geopolitical zones, agroecological zones, as the case may be. Thank you.
To the notion that there's a gap between the research and actually those who would implement the findings, there seems to be a gap in between.
That's the role of extension now. Extension will come in. Extension will be the link between the research and the farmers. Without adequate extension, then whatever the research produce or come out with will not be able to get to the farmers, who will be the final user of that particular research output. So we need to revitalize our extension. Remember when Mr. President was talking about revitalization, we need to revitalize the extension components of agriculture. That is the vehicle that will take this research output to the farmers for proper production. So we need them. We need to revitalize our extension. Extension is greatly short of in this country today. We need to revitalize it. It's not It wasn't as it used to be in the past. We need to wake up again and see what we can do about extension. But remember, the sub-nationals are in charge of extension mainly in their various states and local governments. So we need to reawaken them so that they can put in more effort. I mean, revitalize the extension and be able to take the output of research to farmers on the field. Thank you.
It's like you knew I was going to ask you about extension services, because we've had quite some talk as to the failure of that particular level of, particularly in our food security practice, because when people talk about farming, we just talk about plants, seeds, and go to the farm. Not many people are aware or conscious of this whole element of extension. But let me take a question to Dr. Kamara, who's joined us from Canada. Now, Dr. Kamara, the AFDB is part of the issues that my colleague Hajara raised in her report earlier, talking about a $2.2 billion investment in phase 2 of the special agro-industrial processing zones. What we know, Dr. Kamara, is that this whole conversation about the special agro-industrial processing zones dates back to 2019 or maybe even 2022, and now we hear that we're still struggling to ramp up activity. Phase 1, $538 million. But maybe special agro-industrial processing zone is just one of those interventions that the AFDB is taking on in the funding space for agriculture in the country. What other things do people need to know about what AFDB is doing, and how come it seems Nigerians are not feeling it as much, just as my colleague here in his head earlier?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ayo, for the very important question. Two parts. The first, the special agro-industry processing zones, and perhaps why apparently slow in picking up, or why it was slow in the beginning. I think that's a clear question. It doesn't go back to 2019. It actually was approved by our board in 2021. But of course, 2021 to now is 3 years. So your question is still valid. But what I am here to say is that the SAPC is picking up. Of course, the startup delays could be attributed to several, factors, most of which had to do with things at the country level, but also things that nobody could have had anything to do about. For example, COVID came in between. But just before COVID, when you approve a program, you have to have it signed with the federal government, especially of that magnitude. You also have to have it signed by the co-financiers. The bank had to bring on board IFAD, a co-financier, and the Islamic Development Bank, which are also co-financiers. All of these had to go through their system. But more importantly, at the federal level, you have to have the approval of the FEC, and you also have to have, the opinion of the Attorney General. And then that takes you months, and then you move up to subsidiary, agreements that, the federal government, maybe the federal Minister of Finance, signs with the states. So all of these take time. But once this is going on, there is also groundwork that is ongoing. For example, discussion with the states and the various sites and the various local governments to identify the sites. We lost some time in frequent changes of site. We would identify a site, we would commission the environmental and social impact assessment, we will commission the feasibilities, and then that site gets changed either because of preferences or some issues that come up. So that's in the past. What is important is what is happening now in the SAPZ. The SAPZ, as I speak, and as you know, Ayo, because you were with us in I think it was October when we had the acceleration, meeting with the governors. We agreed on certain actions that will accelerate the implementation on SAPZ in all the 7 states, including the FCT. I mean, we are talking of the Cross River states, the Imo State, Ogun, Oyo, Kaduna, Kano, and Kwara states and the FCT. So in each of those states, we now are in conversation and actually publishing what we call the DBO bidding documents, which is the design, build, and operate, so that we shorten the process. Because what normally happens, you issue bids for design, and then you issue for operate and so on. So it's picking up, and that is not really strange, because projects that are very complex, these are not only public sector projects, these are public-private partnerships. So if it were only a public sector project, we would have moved long ago. But we need the public, we need the private sector. That's why we say it's government-enabled, but private sector-led. Because those resources we are talking about, $538 million for 7 states plus FCT, is just a drop in the ocean if you don't bring on board the private sector in an arrangement that will bring in equity, or that will bring in tenancy and some form of investments that will bring sustainability. So that is even why at the Africa Investment Forum just concluded early this month, we had a pledge from different financiers to the tune of $2.2 billion. Of course, this is a direct response to several other states, up to 37 states that want to come on board the SAPZ. So the SAPZ is going to happen, and it definitely would deliver as we have done elsewhere. So that was the first part of the question. Okay. If I have time, I can go to the second part, what else we are doing.
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Kamara. Maybe you could also put this in, because a lot of Nigerians watching this would just say, well, this is what we always hear. We hear 2.2 billion, we hear this $1 million and all of that. And good enough, you've mentioned Cross River State. So I would like to know, perhaps we have timelines. Do we know when Nigerians can start seeing some of these things? If it's the state government that is holding it back, then I guess Nigerians would like to know.
As I rightly said, no single state government is holding anything back. It is the process itself where we had issues with the frequency of site. That is now behind us, and some states are moving much faster than others. For example, Ogun State is ahead of others. Kaduna has already, launched its bid. So specifically to your question, by the first quarter of next year, we would see contract signs and mobilization and construction of sites will start in some states. But of course, not all the states will start together. This is very, very important, to tell the world out there, because this is a very complex operation, and that it's going to take time, as we also experience in other countries. But once it starts, it's a continuous process. We'll start seeing, our results. What is also important in this arrangement is that we are talking of 3 distinct issues here. We are talking of the hub, the agro-industrial hubs where processing will happen. We are talking of aggregation centers, but we are also talking of the agricultural transformation centers where already action is happening. For example, IFAD, in Kano State is already mobilizing farmers. Through our other programs like the NAS and ATAPS, we are already supplying inputs to farmers. Because what you want to avoid is to just rush and build structures where farmers are not organized. Capacity issues have not been addressed to the extent that when manufacturing starts happening, you will have a continuous supply of produce to ensure sustainability, market linkages, and market predictability.
Just before I go through, because most of the other people on this panel, Dr. Kamara, are farmers, and they are excited to hear about how to access these funds and these opportunities that you're talking about. So if you can give us a figure in total, what's the number of initiatives that the AFDB is intervening in agricultural space in Nigeria, and what would you put the value at?
The value, give or take what the bank is putting in, is about $1 billion. Of course, if you add what others are putting in, it will be far more than that, because we are a convener. We bring in IFAD, we bring in others. I'll start with the NAGS, the National Agricultural Growth Scheme. And I was happy that our previous speakers spoke to how well government has done in delivering inputs, fertilizer, pesticides, and so on. That is the NAGS. The NAGS has built an electronic platform that enables farmers, to get inputs in real time. This $134 million operation is, I'll be very specific, just on the NAGS, that that was approved like 3 years ago, and the last tranche was just approved. Actually, we disbursed it a few months ago, targeting precisely the dry season, wheat production. Having made good successes in the 2023-2024, dry season wheat production as well. This is very, very important because we know currently the government has, I think, 2023 spent close to $1.8 billion in wheat import. So farmers access these through of course, we are working closely with the Ministry of Finance, but also the Federal Ministry of Finance, but also with the Ministry of Agriculture, where the program is based, where you have the Federal National Coordination Unit, and each of the states have coordination units, but they also have last mile agro dealers in clustered areas in each of the states that are beneficiaries to this wheat production program, that can access it.
Okay. Well, Dr. Kamara, I'm very sure that other panelists would like to know how to get on board this thing. After all, you said it's electronic. They'll respond to some of these issues, whether or not they are aware and whether or not they are accessing these things when we return from this break. So please stay with us.
As the Christmas air fills our homes with joy and our hearts glow with gratitude, we at GRB Solar Investment Limited want to take a moment to celebrate with you the heartbeat of our success. From the serene streets of Abuja to every corner of Nigeria, your trust has helped us light up cities, brighten communities, and power dreams. It's because of you that our mission of illuminating Nigeria continues to shine brighter as you gather with loved ones under the warmth of Christmas lights. May the joy of the season fill your homes and your dreams for the new year sparkle with hope.
My name is Dr. Jimoro Baramusi, the Managing Director of GRB Solar Investment Limited. I wish all Nigerians Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance. God bless you all.
From our family at JRB Solar Investment Limited to yours, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a radiant New Year. JRB Solar, the sun is going to shine in everything you do.
Across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying deeper, we make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. It's a blessing to we have more than just a nation. We are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the Real Nigerian, brought to you by the National Orientation Agency.
Be a part of the end-of-year promo. Shop exquisite Swiss trade doors of all types and sizes, onyx stones and home interior furniture at the lowest prices ever. Don't miss out on top quality products at prices you only have to see to believe. Come, see what's available and make huge savings in the end-of-year promo. Offer lasts while stock lasts. Swiss Trade, a blend of beauty and security.
Started very, very little. In fact, the place where I started is not like a lock-up shop. It's an open place whereby you display, you bring your wares out in the morning, and you have to pack it in at night.
And we save money. We live in a small house. We run small expenses. Trading has its own nature. You must be very committed to it. For a business to grow, you must deprive yourself of certain comfort on Monday, which probably you will gain on Sunday. The business is risk. So you must take that risk, continue to take the risk.
So if we are to go in business, we have to have a partner, a strong partner, which UBA is one of them.
cable. Great quality, now with the new look.
2024, a year of reflection and renewal, is Channel's television series to take a look at how 2024 was and lessons we can learn. Just before we went on break, we're talking about AFDB and their contribution, especially their special program on the processing zone, which we talked about. Now we're going to get reactions to that. And those who are supposed to have a first-hand experience with this will be the farmers. So I guess I'll just go straight to our Abuja studio with Mr. Kabir. Mr. Kabir, you did hear what AFDB is doing. This is the second phase. So I don't know if I should ask you if you felt the impact of the first phase or you have expectations, you know, as you hear all of these numbers, especially the funds being involved.
Well, the wheat dry season farming was seamlessly implemented in 2023 in November, and it impacted our farmers greatly. This year also, it was also launched in Calabar, at the Council on Agriculture by the minister. Our farmers reached out and they are taking part in it, and distributions of inputs, seeds and all that are taking place. The program is working in so many areas. But you know, Nigeria and Nigerian farmers are very many. The numbers being reached are not that great, but at least it's better than nothing. What the common man needs to feel is that, look, if you have a program on wheat, say for instance, and it's supposed to augment the wheat we have in country and even the ones that we import, is to look at some of the derivatives of wheat. Is bread now costing less in Nigeria? Is it more other pastries, are they costing less? Is wheat really the staple in all the regions of this country? Now, of course, there are other interventions in maize, rice, and cassava. Let us also pay more attention to them as we are paying attention to wheat, so that the whole thing will be holistic. And my take on this is that for Nigeria to have food sufficiency and then food security, you need to look at the various geopolitical zones and the staples in those zones and optimize the production of those ones and the utilization of those ones. Then you will have collective food security. Yes, the AFDB is doing a lot. We applaud the efforts. We applaud the effort of the processing zones they are doing. In fact, you have heard it, Dr. Kamara say that about 36 states plus FCT are interested, even though right now they are working with 7 states, but there are many, many states who are now expressing interest, which is very welcome. And I believe that we should get to a point where some of these things that are absolutely necessary and some of them that we really have internal deficit are really addressed.
Okay.
If you take wheat, wheat is a very, very important crop in Nigeria.
Absolutely. Quite
for food.
A lot of issues.
Maize, in fact, is the most important. We eat more maize than any other
Mr.
crop
Ibrahim,
in Nigeria, because we even share it.
Mr. Ibrahim, just 1 second, if you can hear me. If you look at in his list here, she has about 20 questions, but unfortunately, she won't even be able to go up to 5 of them, because we have just about 5 minutes to go around the other gentlemen on the panel. Well, Dr. Oladuni, you spoke earlier about the responsibility of states. In 60 seconds, what are the to-dos for the governors, for the governments of the states in the year 2025? The top 3 to-dos for you.
Revitalize the extension sector, in the sense that presently what you have is a ratio of 1 to 5,000 at the minimum, and that is too low for any extension agents to be able to go through 5,000 people So they need to, based on recommendations, they need to go to as high as 1 to 500 farmers, one extension agents to 500 farmers. If you must achieve results in the terms of technology transfer, 1 to 10,000 or 5,000 farmers is far too high. Okay. We need to bring it down to appreciable things that technologies will be able to spread faster, be able to reap the benefits of every effort government is putting in at the federal level so that the state can complement them.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Dr. Atsa, I'll put the same question to you, but more from a private sector initiative, private sector investment initiative. What are the must-do, at least in the first half of next year, 2025, if we must attain food security?
Yeah, so I think what the government needs to do next year is to see how they involve the private sector more in the programs, how they can engage more of the NGOs that are working in the agricultural space in the implementation of programs. That will be very helpful. Government can play the role of actually regulating, seeing that its programs are being implemented on the field and how they should be implemented. That should be their role. But government themselves saying that they will implement agri programs across the 36 states of the country, that is going to be a Herculean task for the government. I think more of involvement of the private sector, NGOs like Sasakawa Africa Association in programs is imperative going forward in 2025.
You made my final question to Dr. Kamara easier. He's spoken about the public, government-enabled, private sector run projects. How really do the private sector come in, particularly in the year 2025? Dr. Kamara.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think the role of the private sector is very, very clear. I think the government is doing a lot. What we need to do going forward, first of all, I think there's a good opportunity for us to consolidate. All the panelists, including the farmers, have talked of different kinds of support that are going into the agricultural sector. We are having impacts here and there. We are still not getting there. And now we have the SAPC program that is actually seeking to bring agriculture to an entrepreneurial, activity that has a promise to scale, that has a promise to create jobs, but that will also, generate wealth and open up rural areas to bigger opportunities. So what we intend to do going forward is to actually consolidate. For example, if you have an SAPC in a state where the hub is located, the ATC and the aggregation centers, when we conceptualize energy projects, for example, or even water projects, we should ensure that they are integrated. That way, we get energy consistency. We also get the supply and the support services that the system needs to operate holistically, and that gives confidence for private sector, of course, to come in big time. And I think government is really playing that role, because all the conversations we are having around the pipeline are now, are converging, in this light of thinking to ensure that, different programs actually complement and synergize each other to the extent that, the business environment will be enabled. Of course, we know the macroeconomic issues, are already being handled.
All right, Dr. Kamara, thank you so much for that. Collaboration, integration, and of course, calling on the private sector to work with the public. Dr. Abdul Kamara is the Director General of the African Development Bank Group in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And we certainly look forward to, the implementation of that You know, hope the states will cooperate. If they don't, tell us, we'll call them out. Right here.
Thank you.
And then in our Abuja studio, we had Mr. Kabir Ibrahim, the president of All Farmers Association of Nigeria, shared the experience of the farmers. Right beside him is Dr. Godwin Atta, also dealing with a whole lot of farmers, country director of Sasakawa Africa Association. Thank you so much for joining us. And then all the way from, we had that from Canada, from Ilorin in Kwara State, Dr. Lufemi Oladuni, the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Agricultural and Rural Management Training Institute. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and your perspective. We certainly do hope that by this time next year, we'll have better conversation on food security right here in Nigeria.
When we return, it's time to focus on Nigeria's bilateral relations, cooperation in trade, loans and grants, reflections and projections. That's when we return. Stay with us.
and cable. Great quality, now with the new look.
The world needs masters, captains of industry, no matter the industry. Thought leaders whose decisions are beyond mere educated guesses. They are based on indisputable knowledge. Masters aren't born. No, masters are made. With the Master of Business Administration and Master of Public Administration degrees from MIVA Open University, the world will always have masters. So, become a master today at MIVA Open University and enjoy convenient and flexible master's degree programs. Study anywhere, anyone, anytime. Visit www.miva.university now to get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the Bulldozer! Fighting for the belt from the Bulldozer is the fearless challenger!
The fighters facing the odds, your dream of home ownership may seem challenging. Have no worries. We are here to partner with you to make it possible. With our flexible payment plans, great discount offers, and affordable housing products, you are already one step ahead. No hassles, no worries. So team up with us and let's win this together. Agron Homes.
Building cities, communities, and homes.
Maliciously good. Where I eat your cheese or sandwich, yam fries or jollof rice, salad, pasta or plata, they make it taste so nice. Now you all get the bomb, you all get the taste. Now I can tell you any day that everything tastes better.
are maliciously good.
But why won't I be happy? Not just because it's festive season. It's moments of friendship and 60 million reasons to love. Small Pepe.
Babes, this dress is given.
Don't forget the earrings. Those are 2 reasons already.
The best reasons will make your heart beat faster. Come on! And make every laugh worth it. It's all about holding hands, sharing and enjoying happy times together.
Have more reasons to be happy with Niger dramas, football, and more smiles on DSTV this festive season. DSTV, your home of entertainment.
Welcome back. Still watching a special series by Channels Television reflecting on the year 2024. Now, the foreign scene in Nigeria was very busy in 2024. We saw a lot of travels and visits, MOUs signed for trade and businesses. What are the results of some of that? And just today, there was that accusation by Niger Republic. We're going to delve into all of that. But first of all, let's take this report by the head of the foreign desk here in Channels Television, Amarachi Ubani.
A warm and colorful arrival to Beijing, China, and President Bola Tinubu kicked off his visit to the country with much expectation. Just like other presidential visits, he was expected to engage in a one-on-one discussion with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where both would table issues of mutual interests. He was also expected to sign new deals that will boost Nigeria's economic partnership with the country and leave Nigeria feeling richer as China's #1 partner in Africa. According to the presidency, all of that did take place. The president did hold a one-on-one meeting with the Chinese president, and both later announced the elevation of China-Nigeria relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership.
Mr. President.
Discussions filtered to economic cooperation, and both witnessed the signing of mutual cooperation documents related to China's Belt and Road Initiative and other economic development projects. And what's a presidential visit to another country without a chit-chat with the Nigerian community, where he charges Nigerians in China to be good ambassadors?
What is uppermost in my mind is for you to represent Nigeria. Nigeria for development. Nigeria for good citizenship. You are one of us, and we have to encourage you to be good ambassadors, all of you.
So did the president have a good outing in China? Career diplomat and former deputy head of mission of the Nigerian embassy in Beijing, Ambassador Chuka Udedibia, says Nigeria needs to be focused on something else: implementation of agreements and balancing of common interests.
We are sovereign countries and should relate to other sovereign countries on bilateral basis as sovereign nations. And each country established what we call joint commissions to handle their relations, their bilateral economic relations. There is also trade in services. There are so many aspects of bilateral relations. How have we fared in all these other areas?
He eventually answers the question about the president raising his visit a very successful one.
Nigerian presidents, not just Bola Tinubu, but other presidents in the past, have been doing exactly the same thing. Because I was deputy head of mission in China. We saw China grow. When it started, we witnessed some of these things. And we advanced our job. We were writing reports. We were advising the government. This is the route to take. This is how Nigeria can benefit from till date. That has not been done.
As with all state visits, the achievements may only be noticed in the coming months. And with the president so confident already, we'll just have to wait and see. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
And we do have Amarachi right here in the studio. Amarachi, it's good to have you. After putting that report together, at the end, you said that the benefits will be seen in the coming months. This was in September. I wonder if it's too early to expect benefits.
Well, I think the recent currency swap between Nigeria and China is, well, some have attributed that to this meeting that the president had, because what's interesting about, this China trip is the fact that a lot of agreements were signed, but then they were signed behind closed doors, which seems to be the characteristic of, our relations with China. A lot of deals are usually signed. We don't know what they are. They give, an array of, agreements that were put together by the two countries, but nothing specific. We don't really hear about anything specific until much later. And I find that is, it seems to be the way that most of, our agreements with many countries are. They usually sign.
But Amarachi, the currency swap, I don't know if Nigerians are going to celebrate it. We had it first in 2018.
Yes, we did.
How much benefits did we see from that? Make us celebrate the second phase.
So I was in China again in August, and interestingly, we met with one of the leaders of the summits, the groups that arrange all of these things, and he was saying, look, the problem is Nigeria has a few problems it needs to iron out. When those problems are ironed out, then we can go back to what it was before. Because we asked that question, why the currency swap deal was, taken off the table. And they said, you have to fix these things in your country first before. And they also said that they needed to have more honesty, from our leaders.
But did he tell you those issues have been fixed before bringing up the second part?
He said those things needed to be fixed
okay.
at that time.
I think we have our panel also joining us.
I could ask you tons of questions myself on this, but hey, I'll be putting you on the spot, and I think I still want you to live a good life. Let's ask some other subject matter experts, who have joined us for this conversation. Ambassador Lawrence Obishakin is with us this evening. He's in conflict management, has a PhD in Indiana. He's an expert in international diplomacy, and he's also an expert in disaster prevention and management. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ambassador.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We also have Ambassador Ayola Ulukoni, who is a former High Commissioner of Nigeria in Australia. He's also a former DG of NACIMA, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. He's with us along with Ademola Oshodi, who is SSA on Foreign Affairs and Protocol to President Tinubu. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I feel highly honored to be part of this discussion, and it's good to see my dear brother, Ambassador Obishakin, on this call.
Oh, great. So
thank you so much, Ambassador Lukani, the erudite ambassador. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yeah, sounds to me like the party is starting. But before you start the party, let's take on some of the issues that have been raised here by my colleague Amarachi, particularly the one that concerns trade and investment. You've also heard here, and you are not unaware. And let me ask you, Ambassador Obishakin, some questions around this whole currency swap thing. Should it be celebrated? Amy doesn't think so, or she has questions as to whether or not Nigerians will celebrate. Is there anything to celebrate from that?
Ambassador's on mute.
Ambassador Obishaki, that's for you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Hope the image is not even there now.
We can hear you. Please go ahead. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, we can hear you, Ambassador Obishaki.
Ambassador Obishaki, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Okay. All right. While we wait to secure that, we have, of course, Ambassador Olukani, who is also, well, he's in the business space as well. So,
yeah, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I think, thank you for this opportunity. I think the first thing I think we should address in this panel is the question of the ambassadors of Nigeria across the world.
We'll certainly come to that. We'll certainly come to that. We just wanted to start with this issue, that because it's a vexed issue, no doubt about it. But even before we even have them, the one that the president himself has been going around, and as some would say, spending taxpayers' money to go all around. So are these investments worth it? So let's start with this China deal. What's your take?
That yes, the China deal is good, is important, but at the end of the day, it is the principal envoy and others who will follow up. Honestly speaking, I had the opportunity to have served as the Nigerian diplomat and ambassador outside, and also the Director General of the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. That's why I'm saying it's the other side of the coin. Yes, the deals are good, but we need to have our ambassadors on ground to be able to effectively, principal envoy, that is very key. And that's why we're saying that it is now time. I think a list of ambassadors should be submitted to the Senate for ratification. It's becoming too late.
That's definitely an issue to be addressed. But when in 2018, when this initial currency swap was initiated, we had ambassadors, substantive ambassadors in China, between China and Nigeria. So how much impact did it make at the time? That's the question. And why should Nigerians celebrate it now?
You know, I'm very fond of the saying of Mario Cuomo, a former governor of New York, who says that you campaign in poetry, but you also govern in prose. When those agreements are done, I saw it as DG Nastima, and we raised the issue several times that what is happening with the implementations of this particular agreement? The nitty-gritty of it is intentional, it's good, but at the end of the day, implementation is key, is very important. Unfortunately, I think somehow we dropped the ball there. There's an opportunity now for Mr. President, for this administration to continue on that. The president was in China, POCAC, between Africa and China, and I think the question which we will ask is, was this also one of the issues discussed on the sidelines at the bilateral level? Where was the problem? And I think this is where we are, because there's no use crying over spilled milk. If it is still there, can we review it? Can we continue? Only the insiders, of course, in Mr. President's foreign policy structure and support will be able to see something about that.
I guess
but
Mr. Oshodi is an insider, so you should be able to tell us, Mr. Oshodi, if, I mean, even when Amarachi spoke, she did say that when she had a one-on-one interview or conversation with some of the Chinese, they said, there are some things that need to be fixed if we really want this to work. So do we know if these things have been fixed? Do we have the right people? Ambassador just talked about getting the right people along before anything is signed. Are we following the right path to ensure that this is a workable agreement and not just on paper?
Well, thank you. I believe that the president is the right person, and that is where he's taking the country. You cannot base his administration on previous administration and the errors or lack of action they've taken. The president is very intent on what he wants to achieve. He's very aggressive about it, and you cannot, I refuse to believe that because things didn't work out in the previous administration, therefore we're doomed for another challenge at this time. So it's a different sheriff in town. And I think we should be aware of that. He's very much serious about closing deals and the reforms. He's not going to put the country through this very painful reform and not see through, whether it's a swap deal with China or the Total deal with France, or even ensuring that the multilateral agreements we have that would ensure our security and bilateral arrangements is put in place. So I can only state clearly that there's a new person in charge, and we cannot base what we had in Nigeria to what we have now. And regarding the swap deal has been an ongoing matter for a while, as you mentioned. The only difference now is that when the President Bola Tinubu went to China with the invitation of the Chinese leadership, he ensured that not only did he put things in place for this swap deal, it also put things in place for bilateral assistance, loans and infrastructure agreements that in the next few months will be announced. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has ensured that his travels, his meeting with these world leaders, not only provides development and financial assistance, but also security. Without security, we can't even talk about any swap or any other business that will take Nigeria forward. So it's very important that we all recognize the fact that there's a different person that has tremendous amount of purpose, boldness, and as you know that because the reforms have been rather painful. This foreign policy also follows that same approach, bold, purposeful, and ensuring that deals are closed. He's the best deal closer we have right now. I mean, we talk about the ambassadors not being in place, which is obviously not a great thing to have, not to have ambassadors. But I can assure you that, with the president's intent and purpose, the ambassadors will only just supplement what he's already doing.
So, yes, the ambassador thing is really an important issue, okay? It's something I've also discussed a number of times on several fora on Channels TV. We've gone more than a year without ambassadors present in our various missions around the world. So how exactly, and I think I understand where Ambassador Olukani was coming from, you have to have, the right people pushing these deals who are working on, the dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and looking at the modalities and looking at the agreements and being sure that these things are beneficial to Nigeria. What exactly is going on with the appointment of ambassadors? I'm asking you, Mr. Oshodi, because you are the closest we have right now to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. What exactly is going on with the appointment of ambassadors? How are we going more than a year without the appointments of, these very important officials at various missions? And the president is still making his trips around the world and, signing deals and doing all of these things, and there is no follow-up.
The ambassadors are coming, but the most important thing we have realized the fact that the things are being put in place for the ambassadors and the high commissioners. We have charge d'affaires that have been sent to the missions. We've had consul generals that have been sent, more of a prelude to the ambassadors arriving. The missions, the foreign missions, are not in great state. The president inherited, missions that were not in great shape. So those things also have to be put into shape and prepare for the ambassadors and their families and dignitaries, diplomats, etc. So it is something that the mission, the president and its administration is focused on. And as much as the ambassadors are key, I want to clearly state that with even the last administration, without giving excuses, took 20 months for them to put ambassadors in place. And so we need to focus on what is the man on top and his purpose and how he can actually drive his agenda. It's a different person, and we need to recognize that. So I believe in the next few weeks, there will be a pronouncement for the ambassadors, and the steps that we taken with the Senate and accreditation to put them in place in the various missions around the world.
Looking forward to that. I will be looking forward to that if my colleagues are not to put you on the spot on that. I want to speak to Ambassador Bishake, and that's because you are former ambassador to Niger, so you fit the bill on this one. The recent accusations by the Nigerian junta leader, Abdurrahman Tijani, saying that Nigeria is collaborating with foreign partners to destabilize his country. We know where, the history of this is coming from, and that's because after he took over last year, the Nigerian president, Bola Tinubu, was one of the first to condemn the coup in Niger. He was also the voice of ECOWAS when it came to what decisions were going to be taken on Niger. So what exactly do you think, he's out to gain in this? And I ask this question because Niger is our neighbor. We share border with Niger, and many Nigerians cross over, and then the Nigerian president made his address in Hausa, knowing that the Nigerian population was a target. What exactly do you think was his motive here regarding making this statement? Do you think he has any proof, any evidence? Would he speak, carelessly about an issue like this?
Well, thank you very much, Amarachi. Well, Niger is in a difficult position now. Niger is fighting a nuclear power country, the former colonial power. So, and at war, all is fair. They are pulling out of ECOWAS, and there are threats that they must have been feeling. But I think out of every rumor, there must be some strands of facts. Nigeria needs to be careful in its utterances regarding its neighbors. Because in international relations, you can change your trading partners, but you cannot change your neighbors, especially when these are neighbors with which you share common ethnic groups. The Hausas are there, the Fulanis are there. Some Niger people even regard themselves as Nigerians because of the empire, just like Benin and most of our neighbors. These borders, artificial borders, drawn only by the colonial powers and not by our people. In the minds of our people, the Hausa man, the Katsina man still sees Niger as part of his own country. Nigeria as part of his own country. But I think I will advise caution here. And we should not be seen as fighting for the colonialists. Nigeria is a father figure. And in Yoruba, there's a proverb that says, the father that is not irascible, easily annoyed, will have the highest number of children under him. We are the chair. We are the 75% of the economy of West Africa. It should not be during our time that the sun will set on this empire that has taken the Treaty of Lagos in the days of Yakubu Gowon, of Nyasimbe, Yadema, Kireku, to build. It should not be during the time of our own president that it will scatter. And as a diplomat, as a former Nigerian ambassador to a neighboring country, I will say when the battle drum of France, of Europe, is saying, kill me dead, it's time to kill me, you better begin to dance it slowly and quietly. Because in the very end, we all come back to be Africans.
Ambassador, there are tons of questions on the issues that you've raised. In fact, we have so many other questions around, bilateral relations, trade, debt management and all. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the people. And I like the question that Amarachi asked you because it talks about speaking to a vulnerable population. Do you see a marriage or a very thin, or do you see any gap at all between our foreign policy, particularly to a neighboring country like China, like Niger, and the people? Ambassador, Obishaken, that is to you. Do you see a gap, or do you see a very good communication between the government, our bilateral language, our ambassadorial diplomatic language, and the people, particularly on the borders, to whom these issues are directly addressed? Go ahead, sir.
What my colleague, Ambassador Olukane, has said is very pertinent here. We need principal partners who can go everywhere. You see, as a former Nigerian ambassador to Benin Republic, at 7 a.m., 6 a.m., I could go to President Yayi Boni. We speak together in the same language. You understand? There's a limit to which a chargé d'affaires can go. But obviously, Nigerians and Niger, Benin, Cameroon, we are by far closer than what we are seeing now. We should not allow gaps. Our people should. There are other ways of planning. There are various planks of diplomacy. Sports, culture. Our people we used to have with Niger the traditional wrestling competition. And when the former diplomatic channels seems to be blocking up, we use the emirs. We have this cultural link. There are some Niger people that will listen to the emir of Katsina because it's their own emir. It's just like the Oni of Ife or the Alaafin for you're going to Benin Republic. They will bow down before him and kowtow to him. So I think Nigeria needs to use better, all the channels. We should fire on all cylinders. When it comes to, I don't mean war, when it comes to, getting closer, cultivating, that's the word, as the famous, French, author says, il faut cultiver son jardin. We really need to cultivate our people because these are our people. At the same time, we have so many, factors that we can use. There are ways of talking to these our neighbors, other than open diplomacy. My professor says that, look, when you want to punish a country, you take him to multilateral diplomacy. We shouldn't be using multilateral diplomatic channels first to deal with our neighbors. We are bilateral, and that's what's unique, that we, Nigeria, is a neighbor to Niger, to Benin, to Cameroon, to Equatorial Guinea, to Chad, first and foremost, than France, than the UK.
All right, Ambassador. All right, Ambassador. I'll just go to Ambassador Lukani, because things like this has stopped Africa from maximizing the potentials. We've talked about having ECO as ECOWAS. We haven't seen that, it hasn't seen the light of the day. We have AFTA now that's supposed to help us maximize the potentials on the continent. How do you think Nigeria can go beyond these sentiments, so we maximize the resources on the continent? The world believes the future is in Africa, and yet Africa is not looking inwards. How can we maximize the resources on the continent beyond sentiments such as this?
Well, thank you very much. I will speak against the background of my own experience, not just as a former High Commissioner to Australia. I'll also speak, of course, as a former Director General of NACIMA, who was involved in the discussions and implementation of the AFCTA itself. And it is important for us to take it from the perspective that the regional organizations, the regional economic communities are key and very important. That's why we need to strengthen it. And that's why it is so sad that we are seeing the unraveling of the ECOWAS. Let me give you a practical example. We have a Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce. I serve as coordinating DG at the time for the Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce to bring in the private sector together, to be able to implement the AFTA, like you said. Because the AFTA is an agreement between countries, but it is the private sector that will, of course, implement it. So that's why we need to bring in the private sector in this particular area. As far as the question of the AFCTA itself is concerned, and like I said, we had the Federation of West African Chambers of Commerce, which was helping to see if it can implement that. So we need to see what can do in terms of members of the AFTA is going to be implemented by the private sector. And practical example, when I was Director General NASIMA, a lot of companies who wanted to trade and take advantage of the ETLS, ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, came to join the association so that they can be able to have access. So that is one area, because at the end of the day, now that we are saying the private sector is key, implementation is very key, that is what we need to do to be able to empower those countries. And so our regional organizations, economic organizations, your ECOWAS, your SADC, your East African must. So what we should do is at our own level to see what we can do to implement that. And a lot of SMEs are also supposed to be involved. A lot of people, especially at the national level, don't know anything about the FCTA. This is part of the problem. And this is where the subnationals, the respective states, comes in. When I was serving as Director General, we went around the states to be able to sensitize them. Because even when you talk about the question of foreign policy implementation too as well, the subnationals have roles to play. We must conscientize them. We must let them know they have importance. Like, for example, if you look at some of the countries, President Tinubu has done well in terms of going abroad to bring in foreign direct investment. When they come back, take, for example, I was reading somewhere recently, I saw some outfit that was signed in an agreement. I think either it was in Cross River State or another one in Kwara, then in Ogun State. It is important for these subnational themselves to be able to be part and parcel of it. So the AFCTA will only be useful if we can domesticate, if we can make sure that the respective private sector outfit that wants to participate can participate effectively. That is where we go, and that's where we see that, yes, the foreign policy thing is not just up there, it is on ground there. And like I said, as a practitioner, I know, and if you look at very many other things coming down, we had the West African region in terms of movement on the West Coast. What happened to that arrangement? To move goods. And it is one of the areas the AFCTA is looking at in terms of the importance of moving goods across respective countries. But the respective regions is important to, and that's why the question of ECOWAS, we must make all effort to make sure that it does not unravel at the end of the day. Like my brother said, if you look at the Lagos, the trade fair across Nigeria, a lot of members of the SMEs from Ghana, from Sierra Leone, from Cote d'Ivoire, they all coming to be able to part of the trade. And Nigeria is key. Nigeria is very important. And that's why I still come back. I sincerely hope, like I think Mr. Ademola said, maybe within the next 1 week, we'll be able to hear that, yes, a list has gone to the president in terms of Nigeria's ambassador and principal envoy in terms of to be able to drive this program. But let's also see and work, how do we make sure members of the foreign policy? And that's why I'm quite delighted. When Mr. President went to France, I saw some members of the Nigerian private sector were part and parcel of him. Yes, for the big people. That is good. That is important. But let us see. Nigeria's economy, you're talking about close to 90% of SMEs. So this is important. This is necessary for us to be able to make sure. Please let us bring the private sector in as well in terms of helping to see locally as far as the AFCTA is concerned. Because honestly speaking, without Nigeria, I don't think there will be FCTA in terms of the important roles which will play in this area.
Was Nigeria's idea to have the CFTA in the first place. But Ambassador Lukadi, I see that, the appointment of ambassadors is really important to you. And I also think that this next topic is also important to you. But I'm going to direct my question to Ambassador Obishake, and that's Nigeria's membership of BRICS, which happened just a few months ago. I remember that it was at the early part of the year when the other countries, Saudi Arabia and a few other countries, 7 of them, I think, were admitted into BRICS. Months later, you finally have Nigeria. What exactly are we going to benefit from being, members of BRICS? Because, the reason for, this admittance is that, our foreign, relations and direct investments and all of that with these other BRICS countries have improved over time. What will Nigeria seek? What will Nigeria gain? And what will these other countries also gain from Nigeria?
Well, Amarachi, multilateral organizations have formed with objectives in the minds of those who formed them. You know, BRICS started with Brazil, started with India, started with Russia, started with South Africa as the only African country. And we know times and seasons determine activities too. At this time, when it was formed, there was a high debate on the dominance of the dollar. And we know what has happened to dollars. The US were weaponizing the dollar, sanctions, freezing, assets of other countries. And now, the world is changing. You know that I just read somewhere, I stand to be corrected, that Saudi Arabia is putting its membership of BRICS on hold. Because these things, countries don't just take actions, mature countries, they're not colonized. We look at our interest. Is it in our best interest to go BRICS? I think Nigeria has always been a very active member of non-aligned movement. And India is a member, and China too. But you should not forget that China is our greatest bilateral loan, giver, creditor. And China is a virtual world hegemon now. It's a matter of time. It's predicted that within the next 10 years, China will have the greatest economy, the biggest economy in the world. So if China is there, it will not be bad for us to tag along, at least. But I think changing the dollar, the value of the dollar, the preponderance of the dollar, the preponderance of the American economy, we have to also be very cautious. As a diplomat, I always advise caution. Nigeria has a lot to gain. Why not? You were talking about using the yuan that time. Why not? Whatever will help Nigeria. Nigeria is underperforming. That's it. Remember that the Nigerian defense industry and that of Brazil were formed the same year, 1962, if I still remember. Today, Embraer, I flew down to Abuja. It was Embraer aircraft that they were using. So where is that Nigerian aircraft, made in Nigerian aircraft? So for you to know, my mindset and what all patriotic Nigerians are feeling, that look, that Nigeria has been crawling far too long. Since 1960, it is time, I said it before, it's time for the world to begin to purchase Nigerian cars, Nigerian aircraft. So whatever will take Nigeria, if it means joining BRICS or blocks or whatsoever, for the average Nigerian to have better standard of living, for Nigeria to begin to achieve what is expected by Africa and the world of it. And at the time, in the 1950s, they said Nigeria might be helping the UK. What has happened to that dream? So I think it's good, but caution. With caution, we are non-aligned. What we want to do is something like India. Be able to fire our own satellite, build our satellites, cheapest but most effective. Now everybody is respecting India. At the time, Chinese too, they know this is Chinese. Why not? Let us start. Let us build our scientists. Let's build our industrial base. And if BRICS will help us, why not? But be careful not to antagonize the Uncle Sam.
All right.
Because...
All right, Ambassador. Let me come to Mr. Oshodi. Mr. Oshodi, I'm sure you will see that all of this, the bulk is on your table, being a government representative right here. And so we hear BRICS and then being friendly with our neighbors and still being a big brother. We hear of AFTA and the collaboration that is in it within ECOWAS. Kindly share with us. I'm sure that the administration of President Bola Tinubu does have a plan and a vision as we get into 2025 of how we can achieve, even if it's not all of them, at least some of this collaboration with our neighbors, making the most of programs like AFTA, and getting ECOWAS together and still being a big brother, in the year 2025.
Well, thank you. Nigeria is taking full advantage of geopolitical shifts, whether in West Africa with Francophone countries or even with the West-East rivalry with, America and China. BRICS, as you mentioned, is a wholly global South, non-Western, even almost probably non-aligned organization. So is the G20. Nigeria has sought membership of both blocks. So we're taking advantage. We understand how the global power base is shifting. Whether it's West Africa, as I said, the West African countries of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, even Chad, and we're hearing now even Senegal are shutting their doors to a certain extent on their former colonial master, France. Nigeria and France have seen it mutually beneficial to come together for economic reasons to further their interest. We also have, France being a major investor in, Nigeria's oil and gas space with the Total Energy. So it's, I believe the president has seen, is aware of advantage Nigeria can take here, and is ensuring that even with the AFTA, with the African Union's pride and joy, economic liberalization, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is also taking steps to ensure that it's not only we signed up to it, it's also enacted. So that's the next stage, and also we talk about the ECHO, which my dream and passion is that it becomes like a Euro in West Africa. Obviously, with the challenges we're having with the Sahel countries, it looks far-fetched. But Nigeria's leadership in West Africa, in Africa, will in many ways help this case. And the intention of a president that is very focused on reforms, not only domestic reforms, but foreign policy, ensuring that our foreign policy is not just an idealist, I think Nigeria has moved away from it, idealist doctrines of fighting for independence or fellow African countries, or ensuring that Africa fights colonial traces, but also ensuring that our interests, our economic interests, is also put in the front. So you would see in the next, as the years go by, our foreign policy being an extension of our domestic policy, what we will intend to do. It's you could also go ahead.
I was going to say that, look, Channels Television will be holding you to your word, particularly Amarachi Ubani. I can assure you of that. But let me take this to Ambassador Lukani. If we are to review our foreign relations in the year 2024, what are the adjustments you would suggest that we need to make that can help launder the image of Nigeria? Because the dust hasn't quite settled on the comments of Ms. Badenoch in the UK and a number of other people who have said one thing or the other about our country, even Nigerians or non-Nigerians saying one thing or the other. So if you would suggest a review of how we have gone in the year 2024, what are the things we need to adjust as a country, be it in terms of foreign policy, foreign relations, debt management, whatever? What are the things that you think we need to review in the year 2025 if we are going to have it better by this time next year? Could you kindly unmute, Ambassador?
Okay, I don't want to reinvent the wheel and say what, of course, has been said before. We had a clear-cut indication that the administration of this policy, the foreign policy, is on a 4D diplomacy. 4D means demography, diaspora, development. I think we must effectively implement that. We have a roadmap, and I commend the administration for this. of this, the 4D diplomacy: development, the question of diaspora, the question of development, and then our population too as well. So effective implementation of our 4D diplomacy is key, should be the heart of the matter, and should be a matter of the heart for us. And in this scheme, that particular scheme, of course, to fly the flag, appointment of ambassadors is key and very important as far as that is concerned. I thought I should say that in one word: the 4D diplomacy to be a matter of the heart, and the heart of the matter for us in terms of implementation. Two, in context of the National Action, in terms of the AFCTA, we have a National Action Committee on AFCTA, on the AFTA. We have somebody who's been involved with it, in person of Segun Awolowo. We have a minister who also worked with the private sector in terms of implementation of the AFCTA, in person of Dr. Jumoke Udwole. These will be one of the key areas which would speed up and also have deep dive in terms of it. The National Action Committee on the FTA goes around the country. So for me, I think these are the key areas. I mean, without saying too much in terms of what should we do as far as 225 is concerned. Demography, the 4D diplomacy, the question of the AFCTA, then ensure that our National Action Committee works so that we can take along with us the subnational. The foreign policy does not end only in Abuja. Does not end in Abuja. A peaceful action of the NATCOM, National Action Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons, effectively taken, will let all of us sleep well across our country. Will reduce the crisis and problem of insecurity because of the illegal arms in circulation. So I think I'm quite clear in terms of your question, and I think what I think should be done in terms of the question. I don't think there should be any review. We have an action plan already in terms of the diplomacy itself. Implementation, and making it a matter of the heart is one of the things I think we should do. And bring along, of course, members of at the subnational level.
And I think it's quite yes, I think it's a good place to take it. I want to believe that Mr. Demola Oshodi has taken some notes. Possibly we will take it to the president. Thank you so much for that. Gentlemen, it's been an honor having you, a privilege having you all on this panel this evening, having this conversation with us, reviewing the year and also focusing on the year ahead. Ambassador Ayola Olukoni, former Nigeria's High Commissioner to Australia, thank you so much for your time. We've also had Ambassador Lawrence Obishaki, who has a PhD in conflict management in Indiana, USA. He's also a former ambassador of Nigeria, as well as Mr. Ademola Oshodi, who is SSA on Foreign Affairs and Protocol to the President. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this evening. And it's been quite a time, right?
It's been quite, the thing with foreign policy is that you can never finish having the conversation. It's ongoing, and it happens every day. So you continue to have the conversation about it. Right now, we're talking about Niger. Tomorrow, some other issue will come up, and that will add to our end-of-year review.
And that doesn't make your own business issues easier.
Oh, I wanted to say, she said that foreign issues, even before you think of outside your border, we started with food. That first, you ate. That's why you're able to come in. So economy takes precedence. But everybody and everywhere. If you talk about health, it's also important. It's another area we're going to review. In our series, to talk about education, talk about infrastructure. Don't even talk about power. Electricity.
No, don't talk about
power. Don't even go there.
No, that's another. So people will have power to watch.
No, that's that. We have batteries on our phones. Guys. Come on,
and generators.
Don't be.
After all, PMS is cheaper now.
Yes, it's getting cheaper.
So there's something to celebrate about 2024.
Not all the filling stations are selling at the...
As I was saying, it's cheaper. Can you celebrate something for a second?
Let's celebrate that.
Thank you so much.
For a second. Yes. Right.
This is the first in the series, as we told you earlier, year of reflection and renewal. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Don't forget, the news at 10 is up at 10. I'm Aya Makinde.
I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Amarachi Ubani.
We'll see you tomorrow.